Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei become A Dragon of Kuoh? Part 3. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. So, you're not gonna ask me where I've been, or why I look different. You're not even going to ask how I'm doing, or why the hell you tried to get me killed. He spat in anger, remaining seated in the chair. The way his voice rumbled sent the two back a few steps as he glared at them in anger. Relax, dude. It was just a prank, man. You beat us all anyway, you're the Dragon of Kuoh, no one is gonna mess with us now. Mitsuda replied, attempting to defuse the situation, only for Issei to shake his head in rage. He'd had enough. He'd spent countless months being the scapegoat for their idiotic antics, with minimal thanks. They'd never do anything but go out and ogle women like losers. Even for Issei, pervert extraordinaire, it was too much. Watch a movie that wasn't rated. Denied. Go play video games that weren't RPGs. Denied. The list goes on, they did nothing but leave Issei out and talk smack about him, yet the boy had no one else. But he realized he didn't need friends like this, it'd be better to be alone, after all. You said us. What the hell do you mean us? Issei grunted in annoyance, flicking the tip of his pen back and forth to amuse himself during the conversation. Last I remember, you always blamed me for your shit whenever you got caught. Look, guys, don't take this the wrong way, I don't wanna hang out with you anymore. Come on, Motohama attempted to place a hand against Issei's shoulder, only for the boy to slap it away, causing Motohama to yelp back in pain. Don't fucking touch me. Look, don't talk to me again, I don't wanna be associated with you guys anymore. Issei glared, before looking at the rest of the classroom, all silent and focusing on the three. That goes for the rest of you. I'm not a pervert like these two, don't associate me with them again, got it? The perverted duo sighed in defeat and returned to the seats, while the rest of the class slowly began to return to their original conversations, leaving the blonde teenager to his own thoughts, only to be interrupted yet again. Well. Look at you, Haidu. You got bigger, and new hair too. Still a pervert, though. Came the belittled voice of Kiryu, also known as enemy of all men in Kuoh. Essentially his female counterpart, though far more psychotic than he could ever hope to be. This off. I don't want to talk to you if you're not going to be nice to me. He scoffed at her remarks. Talking to the brunette was a death trap, once she started, she'd refuse to stop. Oh? Are you mad? Maybe you're insecure and scared that a girl is talking to you, maybe I should check if you're hard. She grinned pervertedly, attempting to glance at the teenager's crotch, before Issei placed a book against it. Known to most men, Kiryu had a power that was evil. She could determine the size of a man's lower half just from a single look at it. Oftentimes, she'd use that power to belittle and insult men for no apparent reason, but from her obscure standards gained from porn addiction. She was the prime example that women were just as bad as men when it came to sex, though attempted to be far more discreet about it. Why are you so obsessed with dicks? Do you literally have nothing on your mind other than penis? He replied, his apparent lack of interest obvious enough for her to get the remark as he spotted the annoyed frown on the girl's face. It's not that, but it's hilarious to see men act tough when they've got nothing packed down there. Came the girl's reply, smirking spitefully at him. So, show me what you've got already. Why? Came Issei's response. Why the hell do you judge a man by his size? You don't even have a boyfriend, you literally spend your days making fun of people for their dicks, well you're practically flat as a board, but if I said that to you, you'd just end up crying. You're a hypocrite, but because you're a woman, you get away with it. He began to rant, as Aika's eyes began to water slightly at his flat remark. Why are you so insecure about your size? It's big talk coming from a shrimp, Haidu. She spat cruelly, attempting to mock him. Besides, if a man can't please a woman, he's worthless in this world. Everyone knows that. It's not about that, it's that you're trying to justify acting like a monkey, but an ape doesn't even think about penis size, an ape just thinks about the strongest mate that will defend her. When I think about it, the way you behave goes below monkey. Issei grunted, before standing up properly, their size difference now very apparent, the boy towering over the girl, as the two continued to maintain eye contact. This is why you'll never get a girlfriend. Mouthed the brunette, as she clicked her tongue in anger at his response. Maybe if you had sex, you wouldn't be such a sore loser. But I guess no girl would want to get with you. Girlfriend, sex like I said, you're incapable of anything besides that. You want to see my dick? I'll take the book off if you promise to leave me alone. He rolled his eyes at Aika's weak insults, as she nodded at his offer. Like a moth attracted to light, the moment he slid the book away, the girl's eyes darted to his lower crotch, hungrily gazing at it like a lioness looks at her prey. Until she truly realized what exactly she was dealing with. The girl's jaw dropped in shock as she stumbled, before glancing again and again and again. She continued to stare at the teenager's crotch, to Issei's unamusement, mouthing off to herself, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Are you fucking done? He shouted at her, ready to slap the girl with the hardcover book he held in his hand. That's impossible. The girl stammered as her legs were shaking in shock as if the girl had gazed upon death itself. How? What the hell are you? You're a monster. That doesn't belong on a human, you freak. Yeah, okay. Tell the whole class I've got a big chungus down there. He spat before waving the girl off, who seemingly walked away in defeat. Yeah, you heard it. I've got a big chungus down here. I'm dropkicking the next girl who asks me about it. Even me, I do. Came another feminine voice from the entrance of the classroom, a certain third-year student. The teenager scowled at the sight of her as the other students began to bicker at the sight of the Yamato Nadeshiko. Akeno Himejima, the second of Kuoh's great ladies. The rival to Ria's Gremory, tall, buxom and known for her seductive older sister-type personality. From what Issei remembered, Mitsuda told him that the girl had the biggest breasts in the entire school, alongside hips and thighs to match. The way her black hair tied up in a ponytail swayed with every step she took was alluring to most, yet Issei was immune to it. There was something about her violet eyes that set him off. As if the woman was secretly some kind of BDSM freak. Hi do, I've been sent by my president to fetch you to the occult research club, would you mind following me? Akeno asked him coyly, flashing him an innocent smile. Yeah, sure. Issei nodded as he grabbed his bag and followed the girl. He could have sworn she was purposely swaying her hips to show off her body to him, yet he refused to look at her. Sorry about the long walk, the old school building is a little further than most from the main school building. Akeno smiled at him yet again. But you seem fit enough to not really care about it. It's cool, thanks again for offering to tutor me with magic. I don't think we've ever met before, but I'll be in your care. Issei nodded, returning the smile back. By the way, is the club just a front for Ria's peerage? Oh my, you catch on quite quick. Akeno winked at him as she gestured to him to follow her through the old school building. Well, clearly not as modern as Kuoh's main building, it had a certain Victorian charm to it, with furniture and paintings reminiscent of that of a Romanian castle. Though, they were devils after all, he'd expected it. Normally, the boy would be wary, but he'd developed a strong trust for Ria's, enough so that he didn't believe she'd do anything harmful to him directly. Perhaps she'd ask him for a favor, but nothing more than that. By the way, Issei. May I call you that? Akeno asked him, flashing him a sultry wink as he nodded in response. I heard about your fight this morning. My, you're quite strong. It's quite manly for someone to fight like that and win. Why, it makes a girl like me blush at thinking I get to teach someone like you. This woman is trying to seduce me. He thought to himself, his mental state a mix of excitement and fear. Enjoy it, partner. It means you're doing well. Drake exclaimed. I'm trying to deliver justice upon the world, not have a harem. Issei snarky replied in an annoyed time. Thanks. He scratched the back of his head as the two finally approached the second floor of the building, two large wooden doors hiding the main room of the legendary occult research club. Prior to knowing Ria's, Issei thought the rumors were that the club was just a secret place for Kuoh's most attractive students to have orgies, though with the way Akeno was giving him sex eyes, he'd still believe it. But I'm just a normal dude, I just defended myself. I should be the lucky one here, I've got a cute tutor to teach me magic. Are you trying to seduce me, boy? She hesitated from opening the door as she slowly began to corner him against the wall. The final straw was when she placed a hand against the wall, parallel to his face. My junior is hardly even my age, and though we've just met, he's already attempting to seduce me. That's adorable. Brag, she fucking cabined me. He cried out in anguish, much to the dragon's amusement. I know, this is amazing. Chuckled Drake. Help me, you old cunt. Issei roared out to no avail, Drake far too content in amusement at his suffering. He could practically feel the woman's hot breath up against his neck as her body leaned in against his own. The girl's uniform seemed to do nothing for modesty, as he could practically feel every inch of the girl, despite the seamless fabric. He needed to get out of this without seeming spineless, yet he didn't want to break his vow. The boy was at an impasse. Well, he paused, hesitant. He cursed himself, why did his brain decide to not function at the worst damn times? I've always liked older women. I feel so bad, stealing from Ria's, but I hope she doesn't mind sharing. Akeno inched closer toward him, till the girl's lips were barely away from his ear. But, we hardly know each other, isn't that the best part? Nah. As nice as this is, I would like to get to know you better. He replied, much to the girl's displeasure. She shifted herself away from him with a pout before finally opening the door. We'll continue this later, Issei. Don't think you've escaped me just yet. She winked at him as he walked inside the room. He could have sworn he heard the sound of a shower in the background, yet he ignored it as he walked into the dimly lit room, adorned with bookcases of all sorts of occult books. Gazing up at the twin black leather sofas, he spotted two people he'd heard of but hardly spoken to: Kaneko Taoju, the school's lowly mascot, lusted after by some of the more dodgy students of Kuoh. The girl was happily snacking away at candies before looking up at him with a single expression of disgust. "Akeno, why did you bring a dog in here?" Kaneko hissed at the boy, to his dismay. "Dog? Issei doesn't smell bad." Akeno smiled back as she gestured toward the seat. "Please, have a seat. President is showering right now, she'll be out shortly. Don't sit next to me, dog," spat the white-haired child. "What do you mean, dog? Dude, I don't even own a dog." Issei glanced at the girl with a confused expression as he sat on the opposite couch, glancing at the person beside him. "Also, yo. I'm Issei, you must be Udo, right? Call me Kiba, Issei. I've heard about you from Ria's and the fight today, you're pretty strong, I've gotta say." The blonde-haired knight smiled at him, to which Issei returned, "Thanks man. I've heard a lot about you too, though mostly bad things." Issei chuckled, shaking Kiba's hand. "And the fight today was dumb, people were being idiots because they saw me holding Ria's hand." "Wait, you were holding the president's hand?" Kiba inquired. "That's interesting. I thought you were a delinquent with the title Dragon of Kuoh. It was her idea, I did nothing wrong." Issei put his hands up in innocence before the two shared another laugh. "It's cool though, all you guys being devils and all. I'm a magician, though aspiring. I only learned about the supernatural by chance." "By chance? You're a dog," came Kaneko's annoyed voice yet again. "What the hell do you mean I'm a dog? I'm a human, dude." Issei asked painfully, to which the white-haired girl shook her head and ignored him. "Don't worry about it, Kaneko probably smells something on you that reminds her of a dog," came Kiba's reassuring voice. As Issei nodded back, he spotted the familiar dark-haired third-year return with a tray of confectionery and teapots, adjourned with smaller floral cups, as the girl gestured toward him for a cup, to which he nodded back as Akeno handed him a warm mug of dark see-through tea. "Thanks." Issei smiled at her, pausing before taking a sip. This ain't drugged, is it? If you guys wanna do anything weird, just be honest and I won't hold it against you." The three devils laughed as Issei awkwardly sat there confused, to his dismay. He looked around for an answer, yet the three ignored him, continuing to laugh at his expense. He sighed, joining in with them, realizing the situation, before taking a sip of the tea and humming in delight. "This is good, thank you Akeno." He smiled at the girl, to which she fluttered her eyes at him. "Dude, will she stop?" came his exasperated thoughts. "Oh, it's no problem at all. If you become a devil, I could serve you this every day, you know." She winked at him, before brushing closer toward the boy, wrapping her arms around his own. "In fact, if you joined the president's peerage, we could be together every day and get to know each other." I gotta think about that. Is that why I'm here?" he asked, raising an eyebrow at the dark-haired girl wrapped around his arm. "Yes, it is. Sorry about the delay, I had to take a shower, Issei," came Ria's voice as the girl walked out with her uniform on and a towel wrapped around her hair. "You look better with messy hair anyway." He shrugged, earning a coy smile from Ria's as she looked at Akeno wrapping herself around the teenager with dismay, causing the dark-haired devil to shift away from him, much to her dismay. "Keep those comments like that for home." Ria smiled at him, attempting to retain her composure and not lose track of the topic. "I actually wanted to ask if you wanted to join my peerage, but I guess it won't really work right now. I respect your wishes, it must be overwhelming for you, after all." Nodding, Issei continued to drink his tea as Ria's walked toward the four sat among the couches, taking a place in a black seat adjacent to them. Akeno joined them and sat by Kaneko, the five taking a moment to all have tea, akin to something out of a novel, rather than a group of high school students meeting up. "So, if I'm not here for that, what am I here for?" Issei asked, glancing at the group in curiosity. "Issei, will you join the occult research club? Not as a devil, just as one of us for now. It makes getting your magic tutoring done easier, it'll also be a place for you to relax between classes. I mean, I'd say you owe me, seeing as I stopped you from suspension, but I wouldn't like to blackmail you like that." Ria's asked as she crossed her legs, exposing her thighs toward him. "Do they do this on purpose?" "Probably, but you're just horny." Drake responded. "Why do you bully me so much? I'm stuck in your head, deal with it." Odd, he loved those eyes in her hair. "Yeah, of course." He nodded, it was a nice place, after all. "Quiet too. Thanks again for that, you saved my ass." "It's no problem at all. I mean, it kinda is my fault. I saw what happened. I was going to step in, but seeing you fight was amazing. You were kind of cool, you know. Like a shounen hero." Ria's exclaimed excitedly, recounting the boy's fight against impossible odds. "I agree, you're incredible. Especially for a human, I would have thought you were from the supernatural world." Kiba agreed. "The dog can fight." Came Kaneko's nod of agreement. And I'd be lying if I said my heart didn't race as I saw Issei fighting all those boys to defend his honor for the president. Akeno giggled as she flashed Issei another cutesy smirk, only to receive a frown from Rias. Oh, come on, President. Let me fawn over my adorable junior, he did win. Look at all those cuts on his face. Easy, you're gonna make me blush. Issei laughed alongside the club members. So, what do you guys do here? Just devil stuff, yes. Mostly just arranging contracts or occasionally eliminating stray devils, came Ria's reply. Stray devils are those that have gone rogue, killing their masters and attempting to murder anything their way. We usually exterminate them, seeing as I govern this region. I think we've found our next target, Drake. Stray devils sound like a good upgrade from exorcists. You'll do well for yourself, partner. Now, about that magic lesson. No one said teaching was meant to be so sexual. Or at least, that's what Akeno's method of teaching was. He found himself slouched up against the dark leather couch of the clubroom, heat rising throughout his body. The source of it being the scantily dressed girl in front of him, swaying her hips and bouncing her impressive breasts with every step she took, all the while making chiding sounds and clicking her tongue at him. The dark-haired bombshell of a woman was dressed in something akin to a Shinto priestess's uniform, albeit cut from her midriff and another cut just above her mid-thigh. It let her show off her toned stomach and well-built legs. In Issei's eyes, she was perfect. Far better than any girl he'd seen online and close to Ria's build. Though, even if by a tiny bit, the former pervert had a feeling her breasts outweighed the Retide's own, much to his dismay. Is it rude if I ask why you're dressed like that? He asked, raising an eyebrow curiously at the girl. I'm not gonna judge though, I know people who wear masks and prance around at night, so it's not exactly the strangest thing I've seen. Oh, you don't like the outfit? Akeno frowned at him, to which he shook his head frantically, giving the girl an eager thumbs up. I'm glad you do. I tend to get better with magic dressed like this, seeing as my mother taught me to. She was a priestess as well, so my knowledge on human magic is limited, but I'll definitely be able to help you get the basics. Your mother was a priestess and a magician, cool family. How'd you end up meeting Rias? He replied, barely able to maintain eye contact with her violet eyes. He often cursed Drake silently, blaming the old dragon for indirectly getting him in these situations. What the hell did I do? Drake's shout came from the back of his mind, nearly making him wince at the red beast's rage. Don't sacred gear uses attract the supernatural? You made these women like this. It's crazy to think that if I look differently, how I used to, that they'd probably treat me different. He retorted. Akeno paused at his question, as her happy-go-lucky expression changed into a neutral poker face. Perhaps it was a bad question, yet he was hesitant to apologize, as the girl's expression changed from stoic to a faint sign of sadness. He could tell behind those eyes that she hid a lot, he was the same, after all. Well, my mother passed away and my father abandoned me. It's a very personal topic, so I really don't want to go into too much detail. Akeno shook her head, attempting to repress the sad memories she kept locked away for far too long. The moment he heard father, his eyes widened. He felt something more for this girl, rather than contempt and pangs of lust. He found a kindred spirit in the girl, someone who'd understand his grief. I understand, I'm sorry. He replied calmly, gesturing an apology with his hands. I still have my mother, but my father abandoned us a few years ago too. It's still hard to get over, so I know what it feels like, more than anything. The girl took a seat beside him, practically leaning into him. She kept her sad expression on her face, wrapping her lean, pale arms against his own, as the girl's voice dropped to a quiet hush, staring up against the dark wooden walls of the clubroom. It hurts, doesn't it, Issei? To know that the man you looked up to, the person that you expected to love and raise you properly completely cut you out of his life. I can't explain that to President Rias, even if she does her best to empathize. She whimpered, as the boy responded to her by wrapping an arm around her shoulder, bringing her in. I know it does. You deserve better. Issei consoled her, barely able to make out the girl's watery violet eyes. You're strong, you know. To be able to go on without either of them. I hear about you all the time, people always talk about how smart and beautiful you are. I hate my father so much, I hate what he did to me and my mother. But all I can do is move on. She remained silent, instead leaning into him further, till her head rested against his thighs. The scent of her perfume wafted into his nose and while not unwelcome, it was a little overwhelming. He'd grown comfortable having Rias around, but this was different. It was ironic, in a way. For so long, he'd wanted to comfort a girl, to have her lie against him like this, and to hold her forever. The old him would have gushed at the feeling and attempted to make it sexual, yet he didn't feel that. He just wanted to comfort the girl and stop her from potentially crying. Akeno, maybe other people don't know what it's like. We can't blame them, I don't know about you, but I used to, and still do envy people for having both their parents. We can't change the past, as much as we wished we did. We were both children, there's so little we can do that we need to move on. The blonde-haired boy said soothingly, instincts came over him, not even realizing that he was patting Akeno's head the whole time. Issei, I'm different. I could have saved mother then. If he was there, we could have done something. It eats at me on so many nights. I can't sleep sometimes because I get flashbacks. She cried out as a stream of tears spilled down her pale face, a pool forming against his trousers. He continued to pat her head in response, gripping her ever tightly. It doesn't matter who you are. If there's something I've learned, a child has no power over what could have happened. It'll take time, but you'll move on. I won't give you the same old lines that most people do, but if it makes you feel better, I'm here for you if you ever need to vent or a shoulder to cry on, or in this case my thigh. He chuckled at his ill-timed joke before returning to his soothing voice. But think about the good parts. You're in a good school, you have people like Rias, Kiba and Kaneko. Hell, you have me, if you consider me a friend. Mothers just want to see their children happy, so wipe those tears away. Smile, even if it hurts. I want to stay here a little longer. She giggled, following his guidance with reluctance as she brushed away the tears staining her cheeks. I'm glad I didn't put makeup on, I would have looked horrible without it. You look better without it anyway. He chuckled with her, brushing her long thick hair with his fingertips. Now I see why the president likes you so much. The girl smirked before forcing herself back up and facing the boy, pressing herself against his side, her face inches away from his own. You know, talking the way you do to a girl might give her the wrong idea, you know. I'm going to warn you, I'm dangerous. You might not like a girl like me. Why the hell does every girl think I'm flirting with them? I'm just being friendly. He internalized his complaints, shaking his head in reluctance. Because you act like a playboy. If I wasn't lodged in your brain since birth, I would have said you're heartless with the way you talk to these devils. Seriously, partner, tone down the charm. Drake chided him, earning Issei's ire. And why the hell do you have to reply to like 90% of my thoughts? Can't I be safe in my mind? No, fuck you. Dangerous. Maybe you haven't heard, but last I checked, all the men on campus are calling me the most dangerous man in Kuoh, he stated proudly, causing Akeno to laugh at his title. Huh, what's so funny? It's so cheesy, I mean not as bad as the Dragon of Kuoh, but you're acting like a character from the president's mangas. She replied, sitting back to normal. But it's cute. I'm different, though. I'll save the details for another time, when we're better acquainted, but I don't want to break the president's heart and steal her junior from her. We all have our secrets, that's what makes it fun. He grinned at her, letting his wild side take over for just a minute. While the boy's internal thoughts kept screaming at him to act rationally, it was as if the more time he spent around women, the worse he got, as if there was a wolf inside of him. And maybe I like different. Then maybe I might just snatch you up, I like younger men after all. She winked at him, causing Issei's facade to falter with a faint blush. Oh my, are you blushing again? You really are adorable, like a virgin. Yeah, I'm celibate. What about it? He exclaimed. Maybe I'll change that, who knows? Akeno teased him yet again, before finally changing the topic. But as much as I enjoyed our counseling session, I think I should let you learn a little magic before we lose ourselves to passion, don't you agree? He nodded wholeheartedly, ignoring her passion comment. The girl began to instruct him on the ways of magic, which mostly happened to be basic mathematical and physics laws that he'd ended up studying the other day. Who knew magic was that easy? So, I want you to start by thinking about a ball of energy. Close your eyes, envision it and tell me how it goes. Don't worry if it's small, size doesn't matter. The girl began to lecture him as Issei closed his eyes with a nod, envisioning a green glowing orb, akin to the boosted gear gem. Oh my, you're quite good at this. What do you, he asked, before opening his eyes and spotting a football-sized green orb resting in the palm of his hand. With an awe of curiosity, he glanced back to Akeno for help. Okay, so how do I, apply this? I wanna blow shit up. Not in this classroom, you don't, as much as I want to see it, I like this place. She answered back with a pleased smile. I should have expected you to be a power-based fighter. Well, that's a little outside my scope, but I think if you think about the science behind explosions and energy, you should be able to cause an explosion. For now, if you just will the orb to go, it'll disappear. And so he did, and it disappeared to his surprise. He was pretty happy with the results, although a little drained. He assumed magic was like a muscle and with enough training, it'd be more powerful and have way higher endurance. For now, he was done for the day. I think that's about it. Can I hit you up another time for more? I'll try practicing making this at home and see how it goes. Issei said as he stood up, stretching his arms with a grunt of exhaustion. Give me your number, we can arrange a time that's better for you. In fact, if you're okay with it, you can come over to my place. Though, I think Rias might get a little jealous. This is the first time a man's asked for my number and also invited me to his home. She giggled, placing a finger against her lip before writing a set of numbers on a piece of paper with a small doodle of a heart at the end. You're awfully bold, but sure. Here's my number. How does next week sound? He nodded before waving the girl goodbye and headed for the door. It was late now, nearly 6:30, and he wanted to go home and sleep. He only really felt the exhaustion from the day's earlier fight, combined with the mental stress of dealing with his irritating classmates and the occult research club now. He wondered if he should take up smoking, maybe the nicotine would help him out, though Drake would kill him for using drugs. But suddenly, he felt something soft press up against his back as Akeno's arms wrapped themselves against his torso, her hot heavy breath brushing up against his right ear. He was nervous, to say the least. He wasn't used to this much physical contact with a girl aside from Ria's, but even hers wasn't as brash as Akeno. And thank you for comforting me, Issei. Came the whispers of the girl as one of her hands stroked his chest. You're a wonderful man. No one has attempted to comfort me like this before and I want to repay the favor. It's not a favor, we're friends. Friends help each other out like that, everyone needs someone to hold them and tell them it's gonna be okay. He smiled back, even if she couldn't see it. Yes, but I want you to know that I'm here for you too. We can get over our pasts together, I mean it. She replied back in a soft comforting tone. Maybe we can meet each other after school, just the two of us. Like a date. Date? Nah. He shook his head, he couldn't do that. Not after what Raynare did to him, and even if Akeno offered, he wasn't going to let her deal with his baggage. But sure, unless you count a date as you, me and Ria's with pizza. The idea of having to share it with the president annoys me more than it should. The girl whined, but smiled nonetheless. But fine, I'll accept your terms for now. However, don't get mad at me if Ria starts whining that you're spending too much time with me. You think I'm going to get a crush on you or her? You girls are crazy. I'm not into dating. He scoffed at the girl, continuing to cuddle and nuzzle herself against his back. Why not? Romance is good, you should try it sometime. Akeno teased him, not realizing the implications of her situation. His fist clenched itself involuntarily as bottled-up emotions of rage and fury found themselves lurking back up in Issei's mind and heart. He hated himself for being tricked and falling for Yuma's tricks. He hated how much it had warped his brain. It was fairly obvious that the light spear had done something to his personality and mindset, causing slight damage to his thought pattern and neurochemistry to the point where even the boosted gear couldn't fix it. Perhaps with time he'd be able to fully heal, but the idea of romance filled his heart with resentment, a pain that not even sex could heal. Look, Akeno. Don't tell Ria's, okay? Came a threatening hiss from the boy as the girl raised her violent eyes at the boy's mildly shook body. I tried that shit once and ended up falling for a stranger who left me for dead. When I say I'm damaged goods, I mean it. Issei came her concerned, soft voice, continuing to cuddle him despite his aggressive remarks. I don't care about damaged goods, not that you are. Ria's and I see you as an amazing man, that's why we like you. Don't ever think of yourself as anything else. Why me? What about Kiba or any other guy in school? He spat, attempting to move away from the girl to no avail. You're not like anyone else. You care about people, even if you think you're some twisted monster that you tell Ria's at night, we know different. She replied, as Issei took a note to realize that the Redeed and Akeno were far closer than he'd realized, gossiping about him behind his back, that was how women were, after all. Besides, Kiba's gay. Yo, what? He chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. That dude's surrounded by girls all the time. And he rejects them all. He's never outright said it, but I saw the way he looked at you this afternoon. He likes you, as more than just a friend, or at least that's what I saw. Akeno giggled before planting a sudden kiss against his neck, forcing him to shift his body forward, yet her grip was far too tight on him, using her enhanced devil strength to keep him in place. I can tell you're mad at me, but don't be. I'll let you go, because it's late now, but I'm going to talk to Ria's about this, and we are going to have a conversation about this when we meet at your house. Is Friday okay? Not like I have a choice, do I? He sneered back at her before finally being released by the girl's iron grip. But whatever. Thanks Akeno. You're the best. I'm gonna head home. He ruffled the girl's hair one last time before finally taking his leave. She blushed happily when he showed her a sign of affection as he finally exited the school building and began to walk home with a goofy smile on his face. You know, they aren't that bad after all. He muttered to the dragon. For once, I agree. Perhaps I was wrong about them, they seem genuinely interested in you, partner. You should probably try and court them both. Drake responded happily. Harem? Nah dude, they'd kill me. I've been on the receiving end of breaking hearts, I'm not going to do that to them. He retorted, shaking his head with a refusal. Dragons are known to have multiple partners. Polygamy is practiced wildly among devils. They'd probably be okay with it. Came the dragon's reassuring voice. For real? Maybe in time though. If Rias and Akeno knew they were chasing after a psychotic killer like me, God knows what would happen. He whined, finally reaching home. The night was uneventful, Rias hadn't been at his place for once. She said something about family issues which she had to manage, to which he nodded happily. Though he didn't sleep nearly as well, much to his surprise. He'd gotten far too used to waking up with a beautiful girl by his bed every morning if they weren't really doing anything intimate together. He'd grown to appreciate the girl's presence far too much. The walk to school had been oddly uneventful too, he didn't even spot the usual students on their way to the academy, despite having the same routine for the past few months or so. But what really got his attention was when he was a few meters from the school. The sight of flying kites, people screaming in laughter and students dancing around made him sigh in confusion. He assumed he missed the memo on a certain event, especially considering the fact no one was wearing a uniform beside him. I missed the one day without a uniform, why the hell did no one tell me? He screamed internally, slapping himself across the face. Seeing you get riled up over such trivial things is amusing. When did you get so caught up in your school affairs? Came Drake's amused voice. Since I decided to actually enjoy my youth properly. Issei rolled his eyes, approaching the gates of the school to get a better view of the school. And God, it was weird. The sight of students dancing across the green fields of the school, a variety of tents of different club members and loud music from God knows when playing, even some of the teachers were dancing. He was even more shocked at the sight of the Occult Research Club's red tent at the corner, with Kaneko and Kiba sitting idly, as he walked his way throughout the dancing and singing crowds of students. Oh, Issei. What's up? Did you miss the memo? Came the blonde smile, who also happened to wear a uniform, much to his amusement. He was happy that he wouldn't be the only one dressed like that. Yeah, I did. What the hell's going on? He asked in confusion, raising an eyebrow at both the blonde knight and the white-haired girl, who sat eating confectionery as well. It's the new festival that they started this semester, they were talking about it last week. Kiba replied, standing up from his seat and handing the young man a pamphlet detailed with the entire day's schedule. We don't have classes today, so we're just going to help the president out. Speaking of which, she told me to tell you to go find her, she's just up on the left with the dancing crowds. Dude, I don't dance. Issei shook his head in disapproval. He hadn't danced since his mother forced him to get those lessons all those years ago. He shuddered at the memories of being forced to learn all sorts of dance moves that he refused to let out. Just find her, dog. President said she'll be sad if she doesn't see you there. Kaneko replied stoically, still immersed in eating chocolates. Nodding at the two and waving goodbye, he began to follow through the path Kiba told him, till he approached the biggest mass of students who were all happily dancing, albeit awkwardly. He felt a few hands push up against him and voices call out to him, even if he hardly knew them. Boy. It's Issei senpai. Came the voice of a boy he'd recognized from yesterday, though he never knew his name, Issei remembered the face as one of the people he'd beaten down yesterday. No way. Aniki. Bring him over here, yo Aniki, dance with us. Another boy from the similar mob yesterday, only for Issei to shake his head reluctant, even if his head was bobbing in tone with the music much to his dislike. Nah, I'm horrible at dancing. I'm looking for Rias, you seen her around? He asked a group of boys while lying through the crowd for the familiar red hair he'd grown fond of. I'm right here, oblivious. Came her voice, as he turned around to be greeted to the sight of Rias in a tight red tracksuit that hardly did much to cover her assets. Did you not get the memo? No. What memo? No one told me shit about this festival, now I look like an idiot. He sighed in defeat. And everyone dancing. What the hell's with this? Rias pointed toward the center of the crowd to see Akeno bouncing around with a number of girls he'd hardly recognized, all giggling and laughing, engrossed in the music that echoed through campus. Hell, he even spotted Sona of all people with her. You didn't know about the festival? Oh well. Rias shrugged before wrapping an arm around his own, pulling him forward toward the girls. Come on, let's dance with them. The next event doesn't start for another hour, and you're going to help me with the Occult Research Club stall. Firstly, no. Secondly, who said I'm going to help you? He shook his head as Rias forcefully led him through the crowds, with both the boys and girls of Kuoh cheering and crying out his name. He'd forgotten the reputation he'd built yesterday with his fight. Though, at least it was positive, rather than calling him a delinquent. Come on, Issei. Please. She fluttered those blue eyes at him again, and like magic, he couldn't say no. Rias knew his weaknesses far too well, especially how susceptible he was to displays of cuteness. He nodded with reluctance as the two approached the vice president of the research club, who instantly wrapped her arms around Issei's free arm. Oh my, Issei. You forgot the memo? Akeno teased, sticking her tongue out at him. Please stop talking about the memo, I might actually kill someone. Issei shrugged as the two girls began to passively tug on either side of his body. Come on, Issei, dance with me. Rias exclaimed, flashing Akeno an annoyed pout, to which she retained her facade of smugness. You can't just hog him all for yourself, Akeno. Wouldn't you like to dance with me, Issei? She teased, pressing his arm between her breasts to his dismay. I ain't dancing with either of you, dancing sucks. He scoffed, earning pouts from both the girls, who continued to engage in tug-of-war with his body. And relax. Geez, why would I dance? Why do you hate dancing so much? Akeno asked, raising an eyebrow at him. My mom forced me to do lessons as a kid, I never want to live them again. He shuddered yet again, cringing in embarrassment at those dreaded dance lessons. I'll never forgive that bastard, Tetsuro, for what he did to me. You're overreacting, look around you. Rias replied, giggling at his expense. She pointed toward the entire school, as Issei followed her finger. All of the school is dancing, people who normally dislike each other are having fun, enjoying their youth. Don't you see, Issei? This is what the festival is about, enjoying our lives as students and having the best time we can. He paused, maybe Rias was right. He was so engrossed in his own struggles and trauma, hardly paying attention to after-school activities and other people. It was only when Rias got involved in his life that he really began to see things differently. Everyone around him, from different social castes of Kuoh, were happy and ignorant of their past differences. Sure, maybe the next day they'd go back to being normal, but right now they were blissful, smiling and happy. For him, every day was different. Who knew what tomorrow would bring for the teenager, more untold suffering or anguish. He refused to let his past experiences dictate how he'd see the world anymore. It was only then that Issei realized that for the past few days, despite the usual repressed memories and sadness, he was actually happy. Not hopeful, not idealizing or escaping to a fantasy world like he usually did, he was genuinely happy for the first time in forever. Being around so many happy people, feeling wanted by others, it felt amazing, even if he didn't really notice it till now. He decided to finally let go of his inhibitions and live life how he wanted, on a whim, and enjoy things as they come. You guys are right, maybe I should. He smiled, glancing up at the deep blue sky with gratefulness. His father was a religious man, and despite Issei's secular views, he believed in the concept of a higher being, much like the old man. He silently thanked whoever was up there for the fact he was able to exist, before looking back at the two girls, now smiling with him. Fuck it, let's dance. You know, it's funny really. I've never been to Japan before despite my father being Japanese. Ikun said casually, as he glanced out of the high-speed bullet train's window, admiring the vast mountainous countryside of Japan. Really? Your Japanese is amazing. Came the voice of the dark-haired man sitting opposite him, as his two children nodded alongside him. Flying to Japan was relatively easy, he still had his Japanese passport, carrying both an Iranian and Japanese one, thanks to his late father's efforts. When he arrived in the airport, he was given minimal trouble by the border patrol, who were more confused as to why a 6-foot Iranian man with a short beard had a Japanese passport, though they did recognize some of the features his father had given him, which let him get a pass after explaining his ethnicity to them. The next step was to just take the train from Tokyo to Kuoh, which was all paid prior by Surziches. He ought to thank the man, even if he was a loud snorer and ate all his snacks. Thank you, I'm still worried that my accent might be too thick for people to understand. I'm working in a school now, after all. He replied, scratching the back of his long, tied-up brown hair. While the young man was fluent in Japanese, being forced to learn it by Guru, he'd never gone to the country to do his father's past there. His thick accent was a problem too, not too Middle Eastern, yet not Japanese either. Ikun had been tutored in numerous different languages at a young age, causing him to pick up bits of different accents along the way, which only made the way he spoke other languages sound strange to others. In a way, he sounded like a foreigner no matter where he went, though not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's that bad. Came the voice of the woman sitting beside him, presumed to be the other man's wife. He was sat by a young Japanese family, and while he was slightly worried that they were overly comfortable with sitting next to a man like him, he accepted their company wholeheartedly. In fact, it sounds attractive. You're a young man, I know for a fact the girls will love it. Oh, I'm not here to find a wife. He chuckled with an awkward forced smile. See, the truth is, I actually came to Japan to find my brother. My father passed away recently, and his last wishes were for me to unite our family and scatter his ashes in Kuoh. He received apologetic glances and reassurances from the family, to which he shook away with another smile. Ikun's first time in Japan was already coming off to a good start, being treated fairly well no matter where he went. Oh my, that's terrible. You have my condolences. The father smiled, far too invested in Ikun's life story. So, when was the last time you saw your brother? That's the weirder part. He's my half-brother. I've never met him before, I didn't even get a picture. My father and my mother were in a relationship but never took it seriously, then he left Iran and went back to Japan to get married. He replied, before taking a look around to notice the entire carriage was centered around him, all nosily listening into his story. So when I was born, he had no idea until my mom passed away and went to raise me because my stepmother refused to take me in. How could she do that? It's not like it was your fault, your father made the mistake, but she couldn't just leave an orphan boy like that alone, especially not in a place like Iran. No offense. Another figure on the carriage roared in anger, earning Ikwin's laughter. He was far too used to getting flack for his home country, yet he didn't really hold it against people. A lot of the comments stemmed from ignorance or general lack of knowledge. With current world politics, who could blame anyone for not knowing anything about the country aside from what the media told them? To most people, Iran was a terrorist state, but it was far more complex in reality. I don't blame her, what's done is done. I'm just here to find them and do the old man's last rites. I don't even know what they look like, but there's one thing I certainly do know: he'll have eyes like mine. Ikwin grinned as his own hazel eyes winked. In a way, he was the spitting image of both his parents, owing his hair growth and beard to his mother's side of the family, with all the men being tall, strong and hairy mountain folk. So how are you going to find him? Asked another person. At this point the large number of passengers began to crowd around their table, all watching the young man with glee. Well, I'm supposed to be working at his school, so I guess I'll just ask by name. He replied in an unsure voice, to which the passengers shook their head in disapproval. No way, that's slightly weird. You should try asking the principal or looking it up on the school computers. Advised an older man wearing a dark suit. How will you break the news to the poor young man? He might not react well to being told who you are. Came the voice of a businesswoman, to which Ikwin shook his head, stood up and walked toward the standing passengers. When I think about it, I guess he'll just look like me. Tall, same hair, same eyes and similar face. He was actually planning to just use his enhanced senses to find the first man that gave a similar vibe to his father, which was probably the most efficient way to do things. After all, if Issei was his father's son, he'd probably be a werewolf too. You must be excited then. I know I'd be if I was finding my long-lost brother. A smaller child asked, as she tugged on the man's dark trousers, to which he smiled and nodded, leaning down to meet her at eye level. Of course. I know I'll see him. I feel like my heart will tell me that the first moment I look at him, I'll know who he is, my little brother, Issei. He exclaimed proudly, earning smiles from all the passengers, who continued to assault the young man with questions about his life, with some of the younger women around his age, flashing him eyes of longing. You're tall, you know. Another girl asked, looking to be about his age. How long are you going to be in Kuoh for? I honestly don't know. He shrugged. Wanna be my boyfriend in the meantime? She asked confidently, to which he shook his head. My friends will be jealous of my foreign boyfriend. I've always wanted to date a foreign guy like you. You're just my type, after all. Tall, muscular and you look like a gangster. Woman, that kind of guy that you're into will probably kill you. Ikwin roared in laughter throughout the carriage, before walking away from the dejected girl. By that I mean, dating me will kill you. Finally, he reached the outside of the carriage, standing as the wind brushed through his face. It was a welcome feeling. The young man glanced out at the green mountains, smiling as he looked up, the rays of sun beaming up against his pale, chiseled face. Issei, I'm coming to see you, brother. He whispered to himself with a smile. He was finally home. He was lost to the music, somehow dancing more energetically than others. The young teenager was overcome with joy and a confidence that came from a place he knew not. Issei's goofy grin was aloof across his handsome face, which only received smiles from people no matter where he went across the school campus. Despite how nervous he was to start joining the two girls, he soon kicked it into his own rhythm, happily bouncing and moving along to the rhythm of the song, despite how idiotic he must have looked. He didn't care, those memories of dancing all those years ago came flooding back to him. He knew someone definitely recorded it, but he didn't care. Everywhere he went, the students across Kuoh cheered him on and even mimicked what he did. Here, he was popular and beloved. He didn't feel like he deserved it, but he accepted it nonetheless. It gave him a reason for being, other than spite. Here at Kuoh Academy, he was a king among men. This festival was the best thing that happened to him since Drag. In fact, Issei was so enamored in the moment, he could barely hear Drag's laughter over the sound of music and cheering. No matter where he went, if he glanced at a girl, they'd swoon and blush with one wink. He knew not or how he did it, but he accepted it. He assumed this was what people felt at clubs when they took psychedelic drugs. Hell, he assumed someone spiked his own, because it seemed out of the ordinary to have this much fun by dancing like an idiot around the school. Riaz and Akeno were by his side, holding his hands on either side, bumping bodies with him. He knew that no matter what girl attempted to come his way, here they were his. He wanted it to be like that forever. A slither of hope came through that he'd be able to overcome his pain and truly make these girls his lovers, to be lost in a state of perpetual happiness forever. Here, this was what he was chasing, the spirit of teenage happiness. Even when the music stopped, the students were cheering each other on and clapping for no reason. He was filled with a sense of belonging for once, as cheesy as it might have sounded. The events had passed with success, though Issei hardly had time for them, instead being forced to sit at the OCR's tent and dissuade anyone from joining, using the same excuse of not currently accepting applications, much to people's displeasure. Instead, he opted to make conversation with Kiba about random topics to kill time, getting to know the pretty boy better. Even if Issei thought the man was gay for him, he really didn't care. He thought the blonde was a good person to keep around. Okay, another question for you. Guns or swords? Issei asked in a bored manner, leaning against his arm pressed up against the table, gazing at the passers-by at his table. Swords, definitely. Kiba replied, still retaining the fake smile he'd always kept up. After a few hours alongside him, with Rias, Akeno and Konko leaving to help the student council, Issei realized the boy was always smiling, even if he was bored senseless. They have a certain charm that guns don't have. Charm doesn't stop a bullet going through your skull, dude. He rolled his eyes at the blonde's uninspired response, to which Kiba glanced at him oddly. What? I'm just saying, it'll take a hell of a swordsman to block a bullet. I can block a bullet. The blonde replied in an insulted tone. Bullshit. You're a devil, not a Hollywood actor. Issei spat back. Look, swords are cool, but that's it, they're cool. There's a reason why humans shifted towards guns over swords. The further you are away from combat, the less likely you're able to get injured, and the more efficient you are at killing. Yes, but in the supernatural world, swordsmen are some of the best warriors around. In the underworld, there are more swordsmen than gunners. Kiba pointed out. Dude, you guys are old-fashioned as hell. You play chess to decide how to win fights. To which Kiba raised an eyebrow infuriatingly. He didn't like people insulting his master. Okay. How about this, a gunsword? A magic gunsword. Okay, this is epic. Kiba said in shock, envisioning the potential idea. The blonde's power was to create blades after all. He pondered whether he'd be able to use Blade Blacksmith's ability to create gunswords. Excuse me, guys. I'm kind of lost, do you know where the principal's office is? Came the voice of Japanese, muffled by the thick accent of a foreigner, though Issei hardly knew what it was. He looked up to the long shadow cast over him to spot something very interesting. The sight of a man, very tall, about as tall as him, if not taller, built quite muscular. In fact, his physique was nearly the ideal one Issei himself was hoping to build in the future, which made the teenager slightly envious. Yet, what really caught Issei's attention was the man's face. It looked incredibly familiar, long brown hair, hazel eyes, a thin, short brown beard, and a face that looked almost like his father's. In fact, if Issei didn't know any better, he could have sworn the man was his father during his 20s. But what really set him off, appearance aside, was the aura the man was giving off. Feelings of familiarity, yet completely alien to him, were beginning to set off fearful emotions in him that he never knew existed. He hadn't felt this way about anyone aside from his father, which made the boy shake in fear. The teenager wasn't afraid of anyone, not with Drake by his side. He'd killed a fallen angel with ease, yet this man. It made him want to run away and hide. At the same time, alongside fears of familiarity, Issei felt a vibe of familial bond with him, as if he'd already known this man his entire life. His brain seemed to instinctively recognize him as if a family member or a close friend, yet he'd never in his life recalled a single moment of meeting anyone like this. Hey, you good? Kiba asked in a worried voice, to which Issei nodded his head and glanced back at the man. Now getting a proper look at him, Issei noticed he was wearing a dark suit. Was he the new teacher? Sorry about that, yeah. Principal's office is on the second floor from the main building, third door from your left, you can't miss it. Issei responded calmly, still staring at the man with confusion. Hey man, this sounds weird. Have we met before? Doubt it, unless you lived in the Middle East. Came his reply. Middle East, that made sense, though he looked Japanese too, as well as Middle Eastern. I'm Ikuen Kurigane, I'm actually starting a job here as a caretaker, first day in Japan too. Oh, welcome Mr. Kurigane. Nodded Kiba before he glanced back at Issei to explain. President Ria said that we'd have a new person to take up the caretaker role and help manage the school. I just didn't know you'd be coming today. Issei could have sworn he saw Ikuen raise an eyebrow at the mention of Ria's name, which filled him with pangs of jealousy. It seemed like this man knew her, and that seemed to annoy him more than it should have. Thanks. Yeah, I just started. This place is crazy. Ikuen responded calmly, his voice rumbling with every syllable he mouthed out. Is this normal, or did I just come at the wrong time? Wrong time? Today's our cultural festival event, so classes aren't a thing for today. The blonde responded, as Ikuen took a last glance at the two boys before smiling and walking away, heading toward the principal's office. That guy gives me bad vibes. Issei spat, earning a questioning glance from the boy sat next to him. Look, it sounds weird, but he looks a lot like this photo of my dad when he was young. My father left my family when I was a kid to go raise his bastard son in the Middle East. So for a second, I thought, you're probably overthinking it, Issei. Why would someone like that end up in Kuoh? If your father stopped speaking to your family, that child probably wouldn't want to return to Japan either. I am sorry for your loss, though. I'm here for you if you need me. Kiba smiled empathetically, placing a hand against his shoulder reassuringly. That man is not related to Haidu. He smells like a monster. Came Kaneko's voice from behind the two, surprising them. What the hell, you were behind us this whole time. Issei stammered back, almost jumping off his seat in shock. Yes. And what do you mean by his scent? Issei asked. I can smell certain things about people. You smell like a dog, that man is a monster. He smells like a wolf, like a monster covered in blood. Kaneko responded quietly, before walking away. The fuck into people do you make friends with, Kiba? Issei shouted at the blonde, who still continued to smile at him. And why the hell are you always smiling, dude? It's weird as hell. Ikwin was shocked, to say the least. Walking into Kuoh from the get-go, the place was huge. Alongside that, the ratio of girls to boys was devastation, and while he was okay with that, what he wasn't okay with was getting looks from every girl that walked past his way. It was like getting sized up like a piece of meat. That was his thing. Not to mention how every girl here had a body akin to a hentai character. It was like he'd walked into a completely different universe. Timur wasn't joking when he talked about getting a wife here, every woman was insanely beautiful, even for his obscure standards. But what really ifed him was the boy that looked like a delinquent. Ikwin was a werewolf, he'd grown up under his father's tutelage on how to manipulate and control every aspect of his powers, one of them was his extraordinary sense. He was able to take in people's scent and categorize them based on species, gender among other factors. It was particularly useful for finding people who were related or supernatural folk in the guise of humans. So when the young werewolf saw this tall, lean boy with obvious dyed blonde hair from the blonde and brown bangs he kept alongside his face, he thought the boy looked familiar. In fact, he almost reminded him of a young version of his father, or of him. For a second, he thought he'd actually found Issei, but the way the teenager sent him death stares weirded him out, as if he knew just what he was. Regardless, Ikwin forced himself to ignore it, most likely he'd probably find Issei in the most obscure places, yet he couldn't get his mind off the fact that the boy he probably met was most likely Issei. His scent was the most abnormal thing though, he smelled partially like his father, a minor trace, if anything, of that of a wolf. Yet, it was masked by something he'd never seen before, something monstrous. As if a demon was lurking inside the boy, ready to get out and destroy everything in its sight. He assumed he was probably Yaokai or some race he'd never seen before, yet his gut feeling told him something far, far worse. Regardless, the young man found his way through the school faculty, all the way up the stairs, until he found the principal's office. Principal Gremory. He sighed again, if it wasn't for his father's wishes, he would have never gotten involved with this weird and overly friendly family. The young man knocked on the door, before opening it to spot a young-looking red-haired man in a white suit, with a striking resemblance to Surzich's. Hello sir. Ikwin Kurigane. Surzich's Gremory must have told you about me. He asked, before taking a few steps toward the man, who was idle on his phone. Kurigane, that was the fake name he'd been given. Surzich's had suggested he go by a different surname rather than Haidu for the sake of anonymity, and also so that Issei wouldn't attempt to do anything stupid in case he found Ikwin before the wolf found him. Ah yes, the wolf boy. Surzich's said a lot of things about you. Call me Zeoticus, by the way, everyone does. The principal said, as Ikwin took a seat across from the mahogany desk. Welcome to the academy, by the way. What do you think of Japan so far? Thank you, it's a great place, alongside Japan. It's interesting to be here, I feel like I belong here, despite being a foreigner. Like a second home, but I do miss my real home too. Ikwin commented, as he retained a serious demeanor, glancing at the man. So, what am I actually going to do here? Well, I set you up as caretaker, but we already have a team that does most of your work for you. Surzich's told me that he wanted you to keep an eye on my daughter. Have you met Riaz yet? Zeoticus asked, leaning in closer toward the boy. She's wonderful, my daughter. Here, take a look at these pictures. All of a sudden, this man, son of the king of devils, began to pull out a long pile of photos of a small girl with red hair, detailing every single moment possible. What the hell is with this family being idiots? The young man muttered to himself with a reluctant sigh, faking a smile and nodding his way through the man's long monologue over his daughter. Yes, Zeoticus. I've got to ask a few favors. Ikwin interrupted him to no avail. She's quite adorable, isn't she? And here's a picture of Surzich's and her when she was 7, I'm quite proud of this picture, I took it myself. I've got to say, humans really did change the game up when they invented the camera. The Redede exclaimed, before glancing back at the irritated man. Oh, sorry, I got a little caught up there. What can I do for you? The reason Surzicha sent me here was because I needed to find my brother. I'm looking for someone named Issei Haidu. Ikwin replied, refusing to let his face betray any of his emotions. Issei? Wait, you're Haidu's brother? I thought your name was Ikwin Kurigane. What the hell are you lying to me about? Zeoticus roared at him, causing him to facepalm. It's a fake name that Surzichas gave me, my real name is Ikwin Haidu. I thought he told you. He replied stoically. Why the hell didn't you tell me in the first place? Honestly, my boy and his schemes. He was made to be the Devil King. The principal began to laugh to himself before pulling out another string of photos, this time of a young boy with red hair. Wanna see pics of Sirs? No. Please no. Dude, don't you have stuff to do in the underworld? He asked in an annoyed tone. Please, I don't want to go back. Not for another few hours. My wife abuses me so much. Zeoticus cried at the mention of underworld. Come on, Ikwin, can I call you Icky? It sounds cooler. You're a young man, I'm sure you know all about how crazy women can be. Trust me, son, never get married. Worst mistake of your life. Like father like son. I don't plan on it. Ikwin spat, ignoring the nickname. Look, I'm supposed to clean shit up, right? Should I just come tomorrow and start mopping the floors or whatever? No. Don't worry about it. Let's just say your job is to help the staff wherever you can. You're free to do whatever you want during the day, but if we need you, someone will ask you to help us out. You're really just here to find your brother, aren't you? Speaking of which, your brother is crazy. Zeoticus exclaimed. Have you met him? He dyed his hair the other day, he actually looks a lot like you. And now he's always hitting on my poor Rias. I'm so proud of her, getting her first boyfriend. Anyway, he's like around your height, dyed his hair blonde and… He began to ignore the man's rant, taking into account the crucial details. Then he realized something. The teenager he met earlier almost fit the exact description. Ikwin was tall, especially in Japan, the dyed blonde hair seemed to be unique to the teenager he met. Combine that with a faint scent of wolf, he may have just found his brother. The boy who'd shot him death glares was Issei Haidu, his father's son. He needed to find him. Ikwin said his goodbyes to the ranting man before rushing out of the room in a frenzy. His senses had already recognized what Issei's scent was, finding his location. The only question was, why was he at the top of the roof? Issei fucked up. He fucked up again, for the stupidest of reasons. The boy found himself in a fit of rage, repressed memories coming out from the side of one man. He wanted to let it out by punching something, but ended up slipping up against the stray roofing tile, his body slamming up against one after another. The damage it did to his body was unbearable, and it hurt like hell. Sure, nothing close to what the spear of light did, but he was in a bad position. His hands clung against the rails for dear life, over 200 feet off the ground. Even if he survived the fall, he'd be hospitalized to the point of no recovery. Even with his body boosted, he couldn't manifest the boosted gear without compromising the supernatural world, something he refused to do. He hated himself now more than ever, yet the whole school was watching him dangling off the roof for dear life as the weak metal railing slowly began to cave away. He could hear the screams of students calling out his name, attempting to rush up to save him, but realistically, he was a dead man by all hopes. It was here, he began to feel tears water down his face. I'm sorry, Drake. I fucked up. I fucked up again, I did something that compromised all our progress. I'm an idiot. I'm the worst partner ever. He cried out internally as he began to hyperventilate, tears spilling down his cheeks. He was lucky the crowd of students couldn't see his face, or he'd have been dead meat. Partner. Death is not the end. Listen to me, can you summon any of your strength to save yourself? Drake asked calmly. He'd seen the deaths of too many partners, yet the dragon refused to cry as much as he wanted to. He'd grown far too attached to the boy in such a short amount of time. For Drake, a dragon who'd gone his entire life without anyone showing him compassion, understanding or friendship, only seeking to manipulate him, fight him or use his power for their own goals, he formed a kinship with Issei that was stronger than any bond he'd felt in the past, and yet it had been in under less time than relationships with previous partners he'd fostered over a lifetime. The Drake, Issei was his best friend, and he refused to let the boy die. He wanted to forcibly manifest the gear, to grant the boy the strength to overcome the odds, yet he couldn't. Every second, the weight of the railing falling back more and more, and the increased exhaustion of the boy's hands barely clinging against the rails, was terrifying to someone like him, who had overcome death itself. I can't. Even though I got so cocky, I'm going to die again with no cheat code this time. I can't give up the supernatural world for my own selfishness. I'd rather die. He shook his head. Perhaps it was time to die. Thoughts of his father, his mother's reaction to his corpse. The idea of abandoning his new friends, of losing Akeno and Rias, filled him with a sadness that burnt away in him. He was so close to fixing his life, yet he fucked up. That was the worst part. Unlike Raynare, this time, this was his own fault. Closing his eyes, he made a final prayer to whatever god was in the sky, that if he couldn't be saved, that he would at least die with honor. That was until the crowd's chanting changed from his name to another. Instead of Issei, they screamed Ikki, though Issei assumed he was just hallucinating. That was until he came. "Issei, let go," came a voice from below. Looking down, Issei shuddered to see the man who'd caused sheer rage from earlier, Ikki, clutching a rope and lowering himself below the boy, holding an arm out. Issei, look at me. If I let go, I'll die. There's no way you could grab me." Issei replied in defeat, sighing in a mix of fear and sadness. "Issei, don't look down. Give me your hand," he roared out in a commanding voice. "Issei, I'm here now." Those last 3 words struck a chord in him, resurging a memory he thought he'd once forgotten. He was barely 8, falling into a 15-foot hole dug inside the park. He didn't even know how, all he knew was to cry and scream for help, desperate for help. He thought he'd die, and he was certainly fearful of the dark, with no one coming to save him. That was until he saw his father jump in the hole with him, reaching his hand out for the boy. "Issei, it's okay," came Goru's reassuring calm voice. He smiled at the boy proudly. "I'm here now." Issei nodded before finally letting go, feeling his body go limp, falling a few feet before stopping momentarily. He looked up to feel Ikki's strong hand gripping onto the hem of his clothes tightly before pulling the teenager up with inhuman strength, dragging the two up using the rope to the rooftop. The sound of the crowd cheering the two men's names was endearing as Issei gazed at his savior with a newfound emotion admiration. The only thing he could do was embrace Ikki wholeheartedly, to which the young man chuckled and returned the hug, patting the boy on the back. "It's alright, you're alright," Ikki reassured him, his strong arms wrapped around his brother. Why did you save me?" "Thank you, but why?" Issei asked him, still wiping away tears from earlier. "Because, that's what brothers do," he said instinctively, before realizing the context of his phrase. "Oh, I mean, brother, like where I'm from we call our friends brother. How did you do that? Pulling me up must have taken some serious strength," Issei noted, walking alongside Ikki among Kuoh's park. "I guess it just came to me." He chuckled as Issei sighed in relief. "Look, the important thing is that you're alright now. Why the hell did you try something like that anyway? I don't even know now, man. I think I was angry over something stupid and ended up tripping on a roof tile." Issei recalled, only for Brunette to begin roaring in laughter. "Holy shit, are you stupid?" Ikki shook his head in disbelief. "There are better ways to get your anger out, go lift or punch a punching bag, don't try jumping off buildings. First day of the job and I ended up having to save your ass. What would your mom say?" "Mom? What do you know about my mom?" he barked back. "You've got a mother, don't you?" "Yeah, of course, everyone's got a mother." He nodded. "Not everyone, Issei." Ikki sighed, turning away before shaking his head. "Look, I've gotta go home. Still need to get settled and all." "That's fine, thanks again for saving me, dude. If you ever need anything, let me know." Issei smiled back as the two parted ways. The teenager began to walk in the quiet park alone momentarily, reflecting on the day so far. He didn't like the fact that Ikki reminded him of his father too much, yet seemed different. The personality and appearance were uncanny, yet he assumed it was just chance. The man had simply spent just over an hour talking to him and yet he felt a bond like a brother to him. It weirded Issei far too much, it wasn't normal. Though his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of two familiar girls roaring his name in rage, a certain Riaz and Akeno, who began to assault the boy with slaps across either cheek that left them red with handprints. He winced, but accepted them. After all, he believed he deserved some punishment for his idiocy. "Issei, are you stupid? You could have gotten yourself killed." Riaz roared in anger, noticing the tears streaming down her face. She had already been crying for a while. "Stupid, stupid, stupid idiot. Now come here." He was taken aback as Riaz instantly brought him into a hug after slapping him relentlessly, sobbing against the fabric of his shirt, only for him to pat her on the back reassuringly and deliver apologetics to her. "Yeah, I was being stupid. I'm sorry for worrying you, Riaz. I won't do it again." He nodded. "You won't be doing it again because I'm not leaving you now. From now on, I'm staying at your house 3 nights every week, plus you're coming to club meetings every day unless stated otherwise," she commanded angrily. "Yo, what?" he exclaimed in anger, before feeling Akeno poke his back in anger. "Don't think it's just her, Issei. I'm not letting you off the hook either. Consider our next magic lesson to be extra difficult, I'll be sure to punish you plenty." Akeno scowled at him, before licking her lips in a way that made him scour in fear. "Now, Riaz and I have agreed you can make it up to us with one thing, though." "What's that?" he asked, raising an eyebrow at the two girls, who now were smugly rubbing their hands. "Taking us out on dates, individually. You're paying for it all." The two said at the same time, to his chagrin. He stopped, glancing at the two, before looking back at the grass pathway. Faking a smile at the two girls, he took a tight breath, beginning to tighten his core before forcing his legs to start moving, kicking himself off the ground at an incredibly fast pace. Suddenly, he began to run as fast as he could home, attempting to outrun the two she-devils screaming his name and catching up to him at a fearsome pace. "Issei, get back here." Rias roared at him, dark red energy leaking from her fingertips. "Oh my, Issei, are you trying to get punished? I'm more than happy to show you what masochism feels like." Akeno teased as the sound of lightning crackled against her body. "Fuck that, I'm celibate." End of the part 1. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.